from our studios in the Southern Food and Beverage Museum in New Orleans. Welcome to our Louisiana Eats podcast series, Quick Bites. I'm Poppy Tooker. Michael Gulotta began a bit of a Southeast Asian revolution when he opened MoPho in New Orleans Mid-City in 2014. His use of classic Louisiana ingredients like cochon de lait and hogshead cheese in what otherwise might be an authentic Vietnamese bowl of pho or banh mi sandwich has caught the fancy of the entire nation. By 2016, Food and Wine magazine pegged him as one of America's best chefs. In 2017, Michael opened a second restaurant in New Orleans Market District, MAYPOP. Here, he's continuing to bend the lines on what Southeast Asian cooking means in South Louisiana. As only he could, he's made dim sum soup dumplings that are distinctly Louisiana Eats. Michael, I'm so thrilled to have this opportunity to come and make dim sum with you here at MAYPOP. This is one of the things I know that really turned my head about your new restaurant because I am a dim sum lover. And that's something we really don't see a lot of here in New Orleans anyway.
I think that was the whole idea. I think the same with when we opened MoPho, we wanted to sort of fill that void in that area that we were in. So no one was roasting whole animals. No one was doing all these curries from scratch and grinding them by hand in mortar and pestles. And so it's like one of those things that I just craved and I couldn't really find it anywhere unless I wanted to drive way into the deep West Bank or something like that. I couldn't find it in the city proper. And so that's why we opened MoPho in Mid-City. And so it's sort of the same thing with MAYPOP. We opened it up and, our first sort of Saturday, Sunday, we were sitting there and we weren't really busy yet. And I was like, man, we should do a brunch. I'm like, but coming up in the industry, you don't want to do brunch because brunch is brunch. I'm like, well, what can we do that's really fun? And I'm like, man, no one, except for on the West Bank or, no one really does dim sum. So we said, well, how can we bring dim sum to downtown? And that kind of became the catchphrase, downtown dim sum. So the idea was how do we still sort of keep the same vein of using local products to make really cool dim sum dishes? And that's how we came up with the soup dumplings, because the soup dumplings are, blue crab, pork sausage, and hogshead cheese soup dumplings, because typically you add some kind of broth to the soup dumpling.
Yes.
And in my mind, growing up, eating hogshead cheese, it's literally just, it's gelatinized broth that we spread on crackers and eat.
It's just solidified pig fat.
Exactly.
Yum.
So it's got all that delicious broth in there. So why not just mix together pork sausage and crab meat and hogshead cheese, wrap it all up in a really delicious dumpling wrapper, and steam it up.
Well, let's do it.
Right.
Show me what you do, because this is really a mystery. I think, in my way of thinking, a soup dumpling is one of the trickiest technical things that they do.
Oh, yeah, it turns out it's a real pain in the butt.
Yeah. Aren't you glad you got that started? Well, show us how you do it.
All right, so here we go. We got our hogshead cheese. We got a little bit of pork sausage. So in the pork sausage, a little bit of cilantro. We've got a little bit of crab paste, some sauteed chili paste for some heat.
That crab paste, that's something I'm not familiar with. What is that?
So we use this crab paste and shrimp paste we use like crazy between MoPho and MAYPOP. And it comes from Southeast Asia. No one makes it in the US. And it's just the crabs and the shrimps, and it's all their bits and pieces cooked down with garlic and aromatics and then in oil, and then it's all ground up and then packed into these little jars.
Can I smell it?
Yeah, of course. And it's allowed to ferment a little bit, so it gives you this really funky, umami, seafoody. Toss it with pasta and a little bit of butter, or pasta and a little bit of coconut milk. It's delicious.
This is an ingredient I've never seen before.
Every time I do any kind of talking about what we cook and that, I say you should have this in your refrigerator.
This is one of your secret ingredients in your arsenal.
Everything. I mean, now when I make gumbo, I use it to make the gumbo.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's got so much flavor.
So we've added some of that into the pork.
Some of that's into there. So the secret part with the soup dumplings is you can't just put whatever your liquid is right on top, because then it'll leak out too fast. So you actually mix whatever your liquid is into it. So traditionally they would use the gelled pork stock, and so you dice it up and then you fold it into the meat so it slowly leaches out of the sausage as the outside steams. And that means that it won't burst and leak liquid everywhere, so you have to mix it in. So you see how we have that nice gelatin? That's what
Yeah.
we want. We want that pork gelatin, that pork-rich stock from the hogshead cheese. So we're just going to tear that up.
And of course, that's something you make in-house.
Oh, yeah. So we've been making our own hogshead cheese since we opened MoPho, because I thought was so much fun. We set a piece of hogshead cheese on top of the pho, and then it slowly melts in. So same idea, all that beautiful pork gelatin melting into your pho. All right, so we're just going to mix this up.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, it's everything you want, right?
Yeah.
It's pork on top of pork with crab meat. Ooh, I forgot the crab meat. Hold on. All right, some big, beautiful lumps of Louisiana blue crab into there as well, because why not?
Why not?
Because we have so many and they're so delicious.
Well, and that's just such a taste of Louisiana. The pig, the crab,
Well, that's the whole idea.
the spices, you've got it all.
That's the whole idea with MoPho and MAYPOP is it's the same in Southeast Asia. It's all about brackish water shellfish mixed with pork. And so that's just like the whole thing just sort of carries over, and all that depth of flavor and all the aromatics that we use, all the garlic that we love here, and the shallots and the onions and peppers. It's very, very similar. So, how does that look? Maybe a little more
That
herbs?
looks pretty fabulous.
Pretty good?
Yeah.
All right, let me wipe my hands real quick. And then we're gonna roll some dumplings.
Okay.
Sure, this guy's getting steamy so we can steam them up. Here we have our soup dumpling dough. Pretty straightforward.
And you make that here.
Oh yeah.
And tell me about that dough.
It's really simple. It's flour and water.
Ah.
It's just it's the ratio of mixing it. It's the allowing it to rest for a certain amount of time and allowing the flour inside it to hydrate. That's the important part, to give it the body it needs, to where it's not gonna be too gummy or too chewy. So I'm gonna roll this out. So the tricky part we've learned is that it has to be just the right thickness, because if it's too thin, it'll burst while it's steaming. And if it's too thick, it's chewy and the guest doesn't enjoy it. So you've got to get that right thickness. All right, I think we're just about there. I can just barely see through it. And that's kind of where we want to be, but you can tell the dough, and my sous chef Dale made this, and she did a really good job at it, because I didn't make the dough this morning. But I can tell because you can almost see through it, and I can pick it up moving around, which means it's at a really good point. It's got a perfect texture to it. So, this is boiling away nicely. So here we go. A little ring cutter, just because it makes things a little more easy. And when you're making, we sell so many of these. Between Saturday and Sunday mornings, it's crazy. Just order after order after order. And poor Dale just watches them walk out the door like, oh my God.
Oh, gotta do it again. Gotta do it again.
Because they take a while to do.
How far in advance can you make them? What is the prep time like when you're doing it in a restaurant?
That's the tricky part, is that, how far can you get them without them starting to deteriorate? So we can literally start pumping out a whole bunch of them like the night before, and we find that they're good. They don't denature far enough to where they're not going to work. That was a lot of testing to be like, okay, when is it still quality enough to serve, and when have we lost that ability? All right, so you got to start. You kind of got to pick it up and work the outsides out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you're going to fold all this together. So this has to be a little bit thinner than the base, because if you fold it just all at the same thickness, then you're going to have a really dense fold and a really thin bottom. So then we have to start this fold.
And it has to get sealed up entirely.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, you can leave a little hole at the top, and that'll be okay.
Okay.
But the sides need to be sealed. That's the tricky part.
Michael, how'd you figure this out? Have you been to Southeast Asia?
That's always the big joke, is that I have not. I have not, and I just grew up with a lot of friends, a lot of Southeast Asian friends, because growing up in New Orleans, we have a huge community. But the dim sum I didn't learn until much later in life. Not until I started traveling to New York and San Francisco and things like that, where people started like, oh, you got to go try this, because we don't have it in New Orleans.
Right.
It's not here. There's only a few places that do it, and as well as I, unless you're really, really popular, no one's going to really go try it. So we just aren't known for it.
This thing that you have learned, this is entirely self-taught.
Right. Exactly. So I'm sure I'm doing it wrong. But as long as people like to eat it, then I'm okay with it. Right?
Have you had any reaction yet from the Asian community?
Always. And a lot of them will be like, hey, we tried it, and they give me their honest opinion, and then I will use that to improve. The first day we opened MAYPOP, I had a lady, she literally gave me a dress down. She was just like, this is wrong, and that's wrong, and this is wrong. And I could have taken it two ways. I could have been like, well, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about. I was like, let's look at it. And we actually tried the things she said, and it was better. And so we changed the dish.
Wow.
The dish that, we changed it, and we everything that she told us to do, we did, and we actually found we liked it better. And so, you can learn from everyone, and so I have no qualms with that at all.
That's the important thing. That's the very best way to learn. It's to listen, pay attention.
Did you want to try making one of these?
Oh, I could try.
Yeah, it can't hurt. We're going to get these steaming real quick.
Okay.
And then we're going to try to make one.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'd love to.
All right.
After I washed my hands and got ready to give the soup dumplings a try, Michael explained how he sources many of his ingredients from producers just a few miles from the restaurant.
So this is called speckled lettuce, and this is grown by Miss Posey at Pelican Produce. So she grows all of this down in the Ninth Ward. She has an urban farm, so we get a lot of our produce from her. So I don't have any of my collard greens right now, but I have these.
Those are beautiful.
So we're just going to line the steamer with those, and we're going to put our little dumplings in there. That way they won't stick. They won't stick to the lettuce. And these will take about 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right, so let me find a nice piece for you. Let me make sure I floured it up. And we're gonna cut 2 rounds. And I'm gonna do one with you.
Okay.
So make sure I get you a good round. That one's for you, this one's for me.
Okay.
So we're gonna put a little bit of filling down right there.
Okay.
So first thing you wanna do is you wanna start pressing around the outside to kind of stretch the outside edge a little thinner.
Okay. Oh, this is so much fun.
So,
do you ever do this with your boys? Because you've got twin 6-year-olds.
I do cook with them, nothing this complicated.
I would think they would think this is really fun.
Well, they would probably just smash it in their hands, but they're pretty violent at the moment. They're at that violent age.
Well, this is like, Play-Doh with benefits.
Right? I like that. Play-Doh with benefits. So once you press it out, so here's the part. And you can either hold it in your hand or you can put it down on the table. You want to come here and you want to pinch, and then pinch, move on to the next, pinch. So I'm kind of bringing it in and turning it, pinch, turning it, pinch, pinch. And so I'm sort of building this pleat, pinch. And we're going all the way around.
Okay.
So there we go.
That was really fun. Now that I had learned these insider dim sum tricks, I asked Michael what inspired him to open a second restaurant.
So the idea was, I always love the fact that New Orleans sort of assimilates all of its cultures.
Yeah.
I love the fact that, like, if you go to any New Orleans restaurant, if you go to a New Orleans Italian restaurant, it's always New Orleans first and Italian second.
True.
And if you go to a traditional French restaurant, it's always New Orleans first and then French second. We don't have that sort of, but the Vietnamese culture is so new that they were still very traditional. Every one of their restaurants is very traditional, and now it's changing.
Yeah.
Just in the last 4 years, even since MoPho opened. Now you see a lot of younger second and third generation Vietnamese men and women opening restaurants that are more New Orleans with their Vietnamese heritage mixed in. So that's sort of what MoPho was when we opened it. We said, how can we make a New Orleans restaurant that has Vietnamese influences? It's not a Vietnamese restaurant. I think that's something that we run into. People are like, well, this isn't Vietnamese. Like, yeah, I know it's not Vietnamese. I'm a guy from New Orleans. I just grew up with a lot of Vietnamese friends, going to their houses and eating bánh xèo crepes and all these things. And so I loved eating it growing up, but obviously it's not my culture. So this is my culture. This is New Orleans cuisine through that lens.
It's fabulous.
I think because I'm New Orleanian, I still cook with a heavy hand.
Right.
And you still see a lot of like traditional people will come in, Vietnamese or Chinese will come in and eat here, even at MoPho and MAYPOP, and they're like, well, it's very heavy. I think that's the New Orleans in me.
Yeah.
But the New Orleanians come in and say, oh, it's so light. So I think that's sort of we sort of get stuck in that dichotomy of like, we're neither Southeast Asian nor are we New Orleans. We're some sort of new hybrid. And so I love it. Like every time it's like, oh, it's like really rich, even though there's not one speck of cream or butter in anything. It's all coconut milk. So the Southeast Asians who like Vietnamese food's very, very light, and they don't actually use a lot of coconut milk unless it's in desserts. Whereas the Thai use a lot more coconut milk for their curries, but still they don't use as much as I use, because I like reduce it down almost like I was trained to reduce cream down in all the classical New Orleans recipes where you reduce cream down to this heavy sauce because that's just the way we cook. So I reduce all the coconut milk down because that's what I'm used to, and it's hard to break out of that mold. So it makes me chuckle every time when a New Orleanian's like, oh, it's so light and refreshing, and then a Southeast Asian person walks in and goes, oh, it's very rich and heavy, and you're like, yeah, we're kind of nowhere in this.
So is there one particular Asian culture that you are channeling here at MAYPOP?
Not really, because dim sum is Southern Chinese more than Southeast Asian, and then a lot of this food has more Thai influence than Vietnamese influence. And then even some of our house-made sambals and things like that, like we have a pork hock dish on right now, and it has a pineapple sambal on top, but that's an Indonesian sambal recipe where you use like really funky shrimp pastes and caramelize it down with palm sugar and tamarind water, but then we put it over a pot liquor made with coconut milk and smoked ham hocks. So it's like
you get so much going on.
Right, and sometimes I feel like I'm pushing myself over the fringe here, but.
How do you dream this stuff up? When do you think these things?
Well, with the pork hog dish, literally, my friends at Chop Peel Farms were like, "Hey, Mike, we just slaughtered a bunch of hogs. We have all these pork hocks, and no one wanted them." And I'm like, and so I'm always kind of the goat of the restaurant industry. Whenever the local farms have things they can't move, they drop them off to me, and I try to figure out something to do with them.
Oh, it's like the commercial ad. Give him the Mikey, he'll eat them. Is that how that goes?
So when I first got the pork hocks, I was like, oh, we're gonna do something really clean, like this really nice risotto Milanese, but we'll use sticky rice, and then we'll make almost like an ossobuco with the pork hock over the top. And I was like, man, I'm still in South Louisiana, so we're gonna make a pot liquor. We're gonna braise these guys, slow braise them in coconut milk, with smoked pork hocks in there as well. So make this really rich pot liquor, but add the coconut milk to it to add a little creaminess. We'll throw in some local field peas, and then we're gonna, after we finish braising those pork hocks, we're just gonna drop them right in the deep fryer. And so the skin on the outside just gets all crackling. So we put this, and we add some local collard greens. So we have this collard green and field pea pot liquor underneath. We still add a little bit of vinegar, just like you would to a traditional pot liquor. Put the pork hock on top, and I was like, well, I need something like really just to kick it over the top. So we made a pineapple sambal, which is a dish that we developed over in MoPho. My chef de cuisine, Paul, over there, who actually he does travel to Indonesia and Southeast Asia every summer. I got two boys. I can't really get out of town.
Isn't that nice?
I can't go to another country.
So your employees go, but you don't. You have to stay home.
I got to manage the kids and the restaurants. And so this is a recipe that he brought back for this really awesome Indonesian sambal. And so we smoked pineapples and folded this funky, spicy sambal with the pineapples, and top that on top of this pork hock. So you have like funky, sweet, smoky on top. You have really rich, crackling pork hock, and then you have this smoky pot liquor with local collard greens and field peas and just a little bit of coconut milk to make it rich. And then so suddenly you have this dish that's everything and nothing.
Yum! It's everything and nothing. Michael, just once and for all of our edifications, if you had to explain to the people who are great lovers and frequenters of MoPho, how is MAYPOP different?
MAYPOP really brings in more of my Italian upbringing. So we have a whole noodle section that we don't have at MoPho. Because MoPho we didn't expect MoPho to really become as popular as it did. That still surprises us. But at the same point, like MoPho, we wanted it to be a neighborhood joint, and it is a neighborhood joint, which means we can only change very little of MoPho's menu now.
Right.
And so MoPho it has its stalwarts that stay there, and it's become sort of this little juggernaut of a restaurant, the little restaurant that could in Mid-City, which we love. But I wasn't able to do all the noodle dishes there because one, it's just so busy. It's so hard to really do all the funkier things that I came up doing in finer dining. And so MAYPOP kind of bridges that gap. It's more of a feminine MoPho. The plates are a little bit more, we can do the prettier plate ups. It's like nicer stemware, higher end wines.
It's a little more fine dining.
Right, it's a little more fine dining.
With the same sensibilities.
Exactly.
And you're getting to show off your Gulotta heritage
and I get to show off my Gulotta heritage. Because we have a pasta machine, we make fresh and dried pastas in-house, like pounds and pounds of fresh made pasta every day.
What are we going to do now?
We are going to make some bacon scallion pancakes.
Boy, that sure sounds like breakfast.
Yeah.
And you and your arsenal of secret ingredients. What the heck is this? I mean, you could go to the Asian grocery, but how in the world could you tell what it is?
It's so. I only recognize it because of the word perilla. It's perilla oil. So like shiso, purple shiso.
Yeah.
So this is the seed of the shiso plant that's been toasted and pressed, and so that's the oil that comes out of it.
Wow, that's pretty obscure.
It tastes very much like sesame. So all we're gonna do, we're gonna roll this out into a nice little pancake. But the trick with these is that there's 2 steps.
Now, is this the same dough?
No, this is slightly different. So this one we actually make in a like a Cuisinart. And it's just flour and hot water. And so that allows for a stretchier dough because the hot water sort of cooks the glutens as you're pouring it in. So it gives you this this dough that you can really get
Some
thin.
extra elasticity out of it.
But it also allows it, because it's the way we roll it, it's actually going to puff when you cook it. So we get it nice and thin.
Ooh, I'm just starting to catch the scent of that sesame oil. That is one of my favorite flavors.
It's the best. So this is actually, so we render all the bacon out to make it crispy.
Oh.
And we save the fat and mix it with the sesame oil.
How could this be bad?
Right? This gets brushed on. And so the way this works, we're now going to take it and we're going to roll it up.
Oh,
Cinnamon
like
roll
making
shape.
A cinnamon roll, yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Now a little fresh flour down. So now we're going to roll it out again.
Okay.
And what this does is when we cook it, everything that's trapped in the inside is going to create steam, which makes it kind of puff up. It makes it tender and puffed on the inside and crunchy on the outside. So then work it out by hand a little bit, get it all stuck together. And then we gotta, technically I'm supposed to let it rest a little bit before I roll it again. That allows the glutens to relax. So then we're gonna roll it back up. But the second roll, you don't make it as thin. So you want it to be kind of thick. So it can be, so that way we cook it in a really hot pan with a good bit of fat in it. And that allows the outside to get really crunchy and the inside to puff up and get really tender. All right, so that's it.
Now, so since these rest in real life in between rollings, if you were trying to make this, let's say at home, what would the time preparation be? And is there something that can be done in advance? How long can it wait once you're done?
Once you're done, you could go right into a fryer with it, or right into a hot pan with it. But I'll be honest, you can freeze these, and they'll be fine. They'll be okay if you wanted to freeze them. We try not to do that, but if you wanted to make a bunch and like for a party, because they make a great little snack because you can fry them and then cut them into little wedges, and then you can put stuff on top and serve them, and they make a great little snack, and they hold their crispiness. And there's something about them because they're not, when they're good when they're fresh out of the pan, but they're kind of good too when they sit for a little while and just sort of get this kind of chewiness. They're just as gratifying to eat with all the bacon and the scallions on the inside. I don't know, whenever I go eat dim sum, I go back to the bacon scallions because they stay good, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. So, what do you think about that?
That's beautiful. And now what do we do?
Well, do you want to fry it up?
Let's fry
We'll
it
have to go
up.
in the kitchen and do that.
Okay, let's go.
All right, let's go.
Okay, everybody. Okay, so we got a little oil in a pan.
So you almost have to fry these. That's kind of the secret to get them really delicious.
But it's a light pan fry because there's not a lot of oil. You're not. This is not a deep fried
This
thing
pan
at all.
works. That's why this is a good pan for that, because it's almost the exact size of the pancake. All right.
Okay, so it goes into the hot oil.
Medium-high heat.
And they cook super fast.
They do. They take a little longer than we first thought. At first we're like, oh, super fast. But you want to let them kind of hang out for a minute and get really crispy. But this one's rolled fresh, so this one might not take long at all. Because we have to roll a bunch and we stack them up between parchment paper that morning. So
I love the way it's puffing just a little bit like a pancake.
Exactly. So that's what that whole rolling is about. There you go. See how it's puffing up?
Yeah.
So that's why we do that roll. We trap all that fat in the bacon and the scallions. You're trapping air and fat in there, and so that's all steaming up and causing it to puff. What's funny, we actually, in the restaurants, we don't actually use a lot of salt. We use fish sauce.
Of course.
So we use fish sauce to season everything. It's just like umami salt. A little bit of salt on there. We were just about ready.
Beautiful.
I got to be careful because when they're fresh like that, they have that fresh flour on the outside that'll burn. So. There we go. Nice and crispy. It's kind of fun. We serve it with a little bit of this.
And what is that?
So that's it's a mash, and it's made from the leftover chili peppers from Tabasco production. So that's the Tabasco mash, and then put a little bit on there and try it.
What's the chunky in there?
Daikon.
Ah.
Well, actually, those are just local turnips right now. It depends on what's in season. But right now, Covey Rise has some turnips, and so does Miss Posey. So we take their turnips.
Oh gosh,
They're pretty good, right?
That is really good. This is the breakfast.
It's got that crunch and it's got that chew.
A little bit of that spiciness. Breakfast of champions.
Right?
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Michael Gulotta, chef and co-owner of MoPho and MAYPOP restaurants. You know, the only problem with podcasting is it's ears on only. But a video really helps bring the experience to life. New Orleans filmmaker Jonathan Evans and his crew came along with us to MAYPOP and filmed the whole thing. Visit the show page to see the how-to dim sum video and sit back, relax, and enjoy. Dying to make your own dim sum? I recently received a review copy of Chinese Soul Food by award-winning journalist and Seattle-based cooking teacher Hsiao Ching Chou. Making those soup dumplings with Michael was hard. Hsiao Ching has made all of your favorite Chinese restaurant recipes easy in her new book. The cooking teacher in her really shows, as the instructions are so clearly explained that anyone can whip up a batch of dumplings at home with very few special ingredients and no special equipment required at all. One of my favorite dim sum dishes is chili wontons, but I sure have a hard time finding them on restaurant menus. For a special dinner recently, I whipped up a batch according to Hsiao Ching's book, along with a dipping sauce that incorporates balsamic vinegar, something that's likely in your pantry right now instead of the more obscure Chinese black vinegar. The wonton wrappers from the grocery store worked perfectly when I boiled the dumplings. Their texture was good, and Hsiao Ching's filling was great. The only thing I'd do differently the next time is to get some extra hands involved. That handiwork can take a little time. To learn how to make Hsiao Ching's chili wontons, just click on the link in today's show notes. And tune in to our Louisiana Eats special episode in May, when we'll virtually visit China to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Great Sichuan earthquake. Automatically find that May 12th episode in your podcast file by subscribing to the show. You'll find a link to subscribe on poppytooker.com, where the chili wonton recipe is also posted, along with lots more. Thanks to filmmaker Jonathan Evans and his crew, Hobson Feltus, Steve Patriquin, and Marion Gay, for the dim sum video footage you'll find linked to in today's show notes. Louisiana Eats original theme music by Johnny Sketch and the Dirty Notes. Thanks to Sarah Holtz and Reggie Morris, who produced this podcast. I'm Poppy Tooker. Thanks for listening, and thanks to our major sponsors, Camellia Bean, Zatarain's, French Market Coffee, and Rouse's Markets. Visit poppytooker.com to see a full list of our partners. This Louisiana Eats Quick Bite was produced by Poppy Tooker Broadcasting.